COVID has done definitely is that it has really shown the real use case of telemedicine, clearly reinforced it that, you need to be able to deliver care even without physical proximity.
Welcome to Prime Venture Partners Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs looking to build and grow their startups. Learn about uncommon strategies and common traps from makers and doers of startup ecosystem.
Hi and welcome to Prime Venture Partners Podcast. This is Shripati Acharya, Managing Partner at Prime. Our guest today is Prasad Kampalli. Prasad is co-founder and CEO of MFine, one of the leaders in telehealth in India. Before that, he was Chief Revenue Officer and Head of E-commerce Platforms at Myntra. And prior to Myntra, Prasad spent several years in senior leadership roles in SAP in India and in Germany. Welcome, Prasad, to Prime Podcast.
Thank you, Shivdi. Thank you for having me today.
So telehealth or telemedicine is an area of a lot of conversations these days. So wanted to get your opinion on what is happening in telemedicine post-COVID and how big is this transformation?
Yeah, it's pretty big considering that both in India and globally, suddenly the interest has, increased by orders of magnitude, and not only interest, actually translating into also usage, both by doctors, providers, and the consumers. Focusing on India, I think that the transformation is pretty big, right? I mean, until recently, before COVID, people wanted to use telemedicine, were using telemedicine. I mean, MFine started 3 years ago. We were actually one of the players building this out. But there was still ambivalence about, is this the right way to use telemedicine? Or government policies were also not fully clear. There were some gray areas, etc. What COVID has done definitely is that it has really shown the real use case of telemedicine, clearly reinforced it that, you need to be able to deliver care even without physical proximity from a doctor's and provider's point of view. And from the consumer's point of view, this has always been an issue in India where doctors are so less in number. Going to a doctor has always been a huge problem, and connecting to a doctor, an expert doctor, is significant issue. All the users, many Indian users have connectivity, but the other end of the connectivity, the doctors were not available. So now most of the providers moving there to be able to deliver care, and consumers wanting this all along. That is basically push the accelerator button on the adoption. And government realized that for the India's problem of medicine access or healthcare access, telemedicine at least is a significant part of the solution. It's not the full solution, but it's a significant part of the solution. It's a kind of an inevitable solution for India's situation where there is only one specialist doctor for every 5,000 odd people, and really highly qualified postgraduate specialist doctors are very, very far and few in number. Some of the appalling statistics, right? There are only 7,000 cardiologists in this country. There are only 1,700 odd neurologists in this country. There is a shortage of at least 200,000 pediatricians in this country. So and they're all distributed very, very unevenly, only very much within the geographical proximity of 20-25% of the population. So that makes telemedicine is an important component of whatever we want to do to improve access situation in India. And COVID just showed this, opened the entire Pandora box on this and said that, this is the only way. And to the government's credit, they reacted very fast. And that also constitutes the big change that I am seeing, that, the policies have been, really clarified. The guidelines have been created. Government even created a program saying that every practicing doctor of telemedicine should go through a authorized, curriculum and get a certification, right? And the moment it starts to get into academics and education and qualification, etc., that now every doctor is now looking at telemedicine as one of the mainstream channels of delivery in his or her career. They have to come across this, they have to learn this, they have to make it part of their practice. So that is what I'm seeing that as the big change, right? There are 1.1 million allopathic doctors in this country, tens of thousands of hospitals. Every one of them would use this. Some may use 10%, some may use 50%, depending on their strategic point of view and their ability to use this. But India will transform into a telemedicine first country very, very soon.
That's fascinating, right? I think the way today you cannot be a software engineer and not be aware or know exactly how to work remotely and use video conferencing or what have you. And what I hear you say is that that's going to be a requirement for
Yes,
for doctors starting now, basically. So let's roll it back a little bit. And telemedicine has been around for a decade or more. It's not something which is entirely new from at least an idea and initial implementations. And it didn't scale that much until the last couple of years. So just keeping aside COVID, in the pre-COVID era, like what led to that scale and what were some of the factors which drove that?
Yeah, so we started 3 years ago. I mean, well ahead of COVID and etc., which is changed the ecosystem itself at large. So even when we started, telemedicine was there. You're right. For it's not a new term, it's not a new technology, etc. But I think the fundamental problems that we noticed were that the deployment was somewhat not optimal in terms of the technology usage, the kind of solutions built, and the business models were also not clear around it, right? What is it used for? First of all, if you look at telemedicine as just connecting it to parties, doctor and the patient in a classic marketplace kind of a model, that doesn't cut the deal in healthcare sector. So that's what we noticed. That was our first insight, that this is not a generic marketplace of commodities. This is an expert-driven, quality-driven, and most importantly, on the consumer side, trust-driven network. You need to really make sure that particularly the consumer is able to trust the provider, right? That's an important insight. And secondly, because it is always seen as a commercial transaction or a episodic transaction between two parties, just as a consultation, and trust was not part of this. And expertise was not part of this. It was limited to very simple cases like, if I'm lazy or if I don't really have to go to the doctor, but I may actually choose to talk to somebody who is a little bit more qualified, like a MBBS doctor or who studied in MBBS, etc. Then I would use telemedicine. But I always, as a consumer, if I want it, if I want to really go to a doctor, I would actually go physically, right? Taking out the trust was a big deterrent, right? So for people to use this for anything meaningful or anything impactful. So the moment that happened, I think the scale did not come really, right? So number one. And number two is that we have great hospitals in the country with a lot of good specialist doctors, experts, etc. They never shifted to telemedicine in a more consumer-friendly fashion, right? For them, telemedicine was always one of the room in their office, in their, let's say, hospital building, wherein they use it for screening off and on for patients. And at the end of the consultation is always that you have to come and visit physically to continue, right? So it never really seen as a care delivery channel in itself. It's more used as a connectivity channel, even from the hospital side. Great trust was there, but technology was not deployed correctly, right? So that was the problem, at least we saw. And when we started to address that, really we saw the scale. First of all, we made the technology a lot more consumer friendly. That means telemedicine is not that where you travel to a primary care center. From there, you connect over a video with a webcam to a doctor in the city or something. Telemedicine is something that happens on your mobile phone. You're a smartphone user, you get telemedicine. You can talk to any doctor you want across the country. So some of the early use cases of us were, some of the early users of us were, downright, villagers or second-tier town users, etc. Everybody got empowered just by taking this technology into mobile. So that was a big scale factor for us. On the other side, on the provider side, we brought in the experts. We didn't bring in the smaller use cases or simpler use cases for which healthcare can be easily delivered over phone. We actually brought real experts, orthopedicians, cardiologists, right, gastroenterologists, or endocrinologists. So they suddenly started looking at technology as something that enhances their practice. They can actually do more effective care delivery with this technology and more efficiently. That's when the doctors came, the patients came, and the patients have that access in their mobile phone, as democratized as the mobile phone access. that's when the scale really, we saw the scale. Like that hypothesis really worked out for us, that we need to bring experts on one side and we need to make it extremely democratized in terms of ease of access for the users on the other side. That's really opened up the entire scale for telemedicine for us.
So you mentioned trust, right? You said you made it consumer friendly and you provided access to experts. But the patient here is not looking to connect to any doctor in the cloud. They're looking to connect to somebody they trust. They are not even looking for the best, cheapest price. They're looking for what is best health advice, which they're going to get. So how did you address the trust issue here?
Exactly. That's really I think one of the biggest insights we have got very early in the journey. When I always talked about expertise and specialist care, etc., where are all these doctors? They're actually in hospitals. They're always on the organized sector. They're always in the places where a comprehensive care, from outpatient care to inpatient care to diagnostics, everything can be done under one roof, right? So the significant number of good, trusted brands and with deep expertise brought together as a hospital, right? So we worked with, clearly built our company around bringing all those experts from these hospitals, right? The hospital stood in the eyes of the consumer, stood for the trust, stood for the quality, stood for the comprehensive care, etc., right? So contrast this with the other example that I talked about. What was the problem with the earlier telemedicine? So telemedicine earlier was adopted with always the assumption that if it's a small problem, I'll talk to any doctor. I don't really need to go to a doctor really, but I just take a qualified opinion a little bit. That's a little bit better than, my grandma's opinion or something like this. That's it, right? That was the one. Now, and every time I have a bit more complicated issue, I would go to the hospital. Where do you go? I go to the hospital, right? Now we brought the hospital online. Right? That's where we crossed that trust barrier significantly, or a lack of trust barrier significantly, right? So the moment we have a Sunshine Hospital and Dr. Gurva Reddy coming in, or doctors from the KIMS Hospital, Hyderabad coming in, or Sparsh Hospital from Bangalore, or Yadharth Hospital from Delhi, or Fortis Hospital at the national level coming in on the platform, suddenly the users realize that, okay, this is where I would have anyway gone. Suddenly now these guys are all in a virtual environment for me, immediately accessible, right? And that's where we completely broke the barrier that until then was struggling to scale the entire category even. That was a big difference, that we work with hospitals, we make a cloud extension of that each of these hospitals. So while we start building, it's a unique kind of network effect. The more we build the network, the more consumers came, the more consumers converted on the platform. Because the more we build the network, the more trusted the platform became in itself.
So Prasad, you mentioned that earlier in telemedicine, folks are using it for minor ailments. And part of the reason was that they didn't have trust on the other side because the doctor was anonymous. Now with mFine, they're going to a hospital which they know, a doctor in that hospital, and that's the person they're talking to on the other side. So what kind of ailments are you seeing people use mFine for at this point of time, which wouldn't be something they would use, say, a few years earlier?
Right now, if you see at an aggregate level, we are solving, 30 odd specialties, consultations across 30 odd specialties, right? We have more than 35% of our consultations are in the kind of deep specialties or super specialties, as we call it in India, like cardiology or gastroenterology, etc. Let me give you a couple of examples, right? Like one of the patients was always thinking that came with a chest pain complaint and also, other symptoms, etc. Thought she was having a heart attack or something like this. But we could first of all triage, and the cardiologist actually could converse and look at the data, like her hypertension, etc., and other symptoms, etc., and actually get her assured that it is not a heart attack, and then also treat. And not only that, there is also chronic arrhythmia patients who got treated. This is a patient from Jammu and Kashmir, very early when we launched cardiology. So he actually got treated for his chronic arrhythmia. And another case of deeper thyroid issues, somebody from Punjab talking to a doctor in Bangalore, and because the problem is getting better and better over a couple of consultations, the solution, her health is getting better. She actually took a subscription of mFine and then staying on for 6 more months to actually completely recover from her chronic issues, right? And things like this are many examples. Another example is from West Bengal, 60-odd-year-old woman. Her son created this case and talked to the doctor, and then over a video call, etc., for a neurological problem. With medication, it could be recovered. They all thought it's a psychiatric issue, but it's actually a neurological issue. So that was diagnosed fully by the neurologist from Hyderabad. And they are, again, a happy, continuous user of M-Fine as well. So there are cases like this which tell us that, first of all, the demand is there. And second of all, they can be treated for, deeper ailments than just always using telemedicine only for fever, cough, cold kind of things.
So can you tax a little bit? We have heard about AI in healthcare for a long time, and now it is being used a lot in healthcare as well. So what is your opinion on the role of AI in healthcare, how significant it is, and how do we see it unfolding?
Yeah, I think generically speaking, healthcare has a lot of inferencing, intelligence built around based on data, etc. Even a doctor goes through a lot of data and he has a certain kind of thinking and practice over a period of time he or she has developed to understand what might be the ailment, what is the diagnosis, etc. I think the problem space is very amenable to applying machine learning over huge sets of data and solving many diagnostics or diagnosis related issues, right? And make it more accurate, efficient, etc. for doctors. That's a general application, and a lot of people have used this in very specific areas, like for example, how to read X-rays and get certain deductions out of it, or how to read ECG reports and certain deductions out of it. Very narrowly defined problems and solving deeply, right, for different ailments. We also saw AI in a bigger way, in a broader way rather, that if we can actually use AI in making the doctor's life much more efficient and in collecting the data in an accurate way and building correlations and helping in the diagnosis process and treatment process for the doctor. So that will change the economics for the doctor itself and the industry as a whole, right? So if a doctor, this is very, very important for India. So as I told, we have very few doctors and even very few hospitals, right? I mean, all of us have only 24 hours in a day, right? So they are able to see only a certain number of patients today, right? If you can change that equation and, by multiples, right? 3, 4, 5 times more patients can be served by the same number of doctors. That actually changes the economics of care delivery in India. So that's the problem we have applied AI to. We built an AI system that understands medical care delivery, diagnosis process, treatment options, differential diagnosis. How do we do investigations completely in a autonomous way without doctor having to go through a similar questionnaire for every patient in an episodic way everywhere. At the same time, create a very rich database and relationships across data so that the conclusions are accurate. Conclusions are very, very easily made by the doctor as well. So that's the part where we applied AI, making the diagnosis process extremely efficient for the doctor.
Is it also possible, I'm thinking, that this might help the doctors in diagnosing ailments which are afflicting only a small percentage of the population, so which might be a little bit more rare. So with the AI system, I'm thinking it can assist a doctor in saying, hey, look, there's actually a possibility of something which is occurring so rarely that the doctor themselves might not be as exposed to, how that might look like.
Yes, I think there are multiple applications, Shripati. I think one is the treating rare kind of conditions, etc. Right? Even before that, even identifying those rare conditions in a much more accurate way. So look at the typical busy doctors in Indian hospitals today, right? So they can't afford to spend so much time on the data, and they can't afford to today process all that and build those correlations in their mind and then really absolutely make sure that every case is looked at in a thorough, detailed way, right? I think the machine can complement the human intuition, human expertise in a really, really effective way. That's what we have seen. Again, another example. So because we have longitudinal data of the patients, some of the doctors reported that they could actually see the trends in some of the vitals in a very clear way in a graph. Like, for example, I have a cholesterol issue, and my cholesterol values and my entire lipid profile, etc., is presented as a graph of moving values over a long period of time for the patient. The doctor could easily identify correlation that at what point in time I did medication changes for some other symptom of the patient, and what point in time other things are changing, right? So we could easily draw these correlations and show the doctor. That's really, really powerful to be able to do it very repeatably for every patient, every single patient, whether it's in front of you or remotely, without getting fatigued, without getting losing the data, without having to go through reams of paper. I think that's a great benefit for the doctors. I think that's where they both can identify rare conditions as well as treat them, of course, but also the early detection, right? An accurate detection of issues that before they get complicated is also getting. These are the different use cases that doctors are reporting while using the system.
What I hear you say that it's changing the paradigm of treatment, which is one, now you can look at the history of the patient over a continuous period of time instead of just a snapshot. You're coming and giving all the information to the doctor, and being able to crunch all that data is what AI is doing for the doctor, being assistant
exactly
in that fashion. So what are some of the non-obvious insights that you have learned about healthcare and patient-doctor interactions in the 3 years that MFine has been around?
Yeah, I mean, actually, many nuggets, actually. And, both bigger ones, which led to bigger changes in the system that we design, or the smaller ones where small product changes we have done. What we saw was that mobile was becoming more an examination tool for the doctor. So it's not a connectivity tool. It's not a video tool.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right? So I think that's where also telemedicine gets it right. 1.0, if I may call it, gets it wrong. It is not, if you have mobile and connectivity, don't just use for video. It is not that. Doctors are looking for what more. So a lot more doctors used to, initially, when the product was still early days, some of the doctors used to post a picture. Like, for example, somebody reported an abdomen pain, and people used to post a picture and then say, where exactly is the abdomen pain? Can you point to me on the picture which coordinate it is, right? 1, 2, 3, which box, right? So that's basically led us to change the product paradigm in terms of changing the entire health, the keyboard itself, what the patient uses and the doctor uses, so that we show up only relevant parts. We make entire questioning and discussion into visual medium. So today, if you report a knee pain, we have some GIFs moving and saying that which posture has you got more pain, or which posture is actually relaxing you, etc. Right? The entire making it extremely easy for the patient and the doctor to collect the information. Right? It's becoming more and more examination tool. That's the important thing. Another thing, the same thing, right? Over a period of time, when we saw general physicians treating cough, we said that actually we went back to the doctors and they said, can I process this cough sound and understand what exactly is the cough coming from, like a lower respiratory infection or a higher upper respiratory infection? Doctors very much said yes. They referred to some papers, etc., to us, and then they said yes, this can be done, and we immediately launched that feature, saying that now we have 70, 80 people every day coughing into the phone and recording their cough, and it is helping. It is actually helping to accurately diagnose, and how else the person is supposed to explain what kind of cough he or she has, right? So of course, camera is used extensively for dermatology situations or even tonsillitis kind of situations, etc., by taking pictures, etc., right? So one of the consumer, I remember very early days, doctor was asking how active is the baby, and the consumer simply took a 30-second video of the baby and sent it. It's very clear the baby is very, very active. She is not fully down by the fever. So these are the things that we now make it part of the core product interaction paradigm itself, right? Those are the examples that we have built. One macro thing which we have changed, we have understood very early, is that on internet, when you are collecting doctors and patients, the appointment system doesn't work. See, you have to have the internet paradigm. The user comes to internet for an immediate connection, right? Internet is not giving you appointment for opening a page, right? I can open this page at 3 o'clock, right? So no, that's a huge change. That's where we designed the entire system to be on demand. So anybody could have built the system with a very obvious insight saying that, okay, doctor means appointment. So show his times, somebody sets the time and he comes, and then that instead of physical, it will be video. No, this doesn't work. Right? That was pretty initially very non-obvious, but very early days we got this saying that when somebody opens your app on internet, looks at finding a doctor, they need to talk to they need to be able to talk to doctor now. That's it. It's a very on-demand system. That's how we built the entire system in mFine as well. And that seemed to be one of the biggest differentiator in the experience that people say, because you can connect to the doctor in 60 seconds. That's what we say, and that's what people experience.
Do you think that you mentioned earlier that a staggering number, which is India has a shortage of 200,000, so 2 lakh pediatricians.
Yes.
And if I just multiply by how many pediatricians a person, how many patients a pediatrician can see, it is that many patients who do not have access really to a pediatrician, right? Which is really shocking. And that is something which every mother needs access
absolutely.
to for her child. So India is developing something called Health Stack, which is a digital public good being developed for healthcare. Could you tell us a little bit about what is it and why is it relevant?
Yeah, this is actually a very good initiative. Some of the planning organizations, part of the government and partly NGOs coming together and creating standards for, information storage, sharing, access to healthcare services, etc., so that there is a level playing field for everybody. And there is also consumer right protection across these technology tools, right? Technology access, right? So I think it's a very big initiative and good initiative, and it got a lot of momentum also post-COVID. So we are participating in that in a deeper way, so that we also can help shape the entire industry's standards that are being used, also play in that level playing field for access, particularly for bringing quality providers, as well as making sure that the consumers' rights and information is protected. Right? So it is around, as I said, standardization of access protocols. It's around data protection. It's around data portability, so that your data as a consumer, you own it, and you don't have to get your data locked up in one provider or the other. There is a portability across the providers, etc. There are many components of this. Even telemedicine, what is the right way to provide a unified access across different service providers, etc. So these things help really scale adoption because they just make it simpler for providers to participate in this technology-led care delivery. At the same time, protects consumer rights, and consumers get more and more choice. Something similar to what happened in the fintech space, in the financial sector, like payments have been standardized in India with UPI and things like this. Something similar at a conceptual level. I think, of course, there are so many nuances to be solved in healthcare, but that is something that it's evolving very fast, and we are participating there. We are shaping those things, and we have got a lot of insights over the last 3 years building the solution in mFine. So teams are actually working together with this organization across multiple startups and provider companies, etc., to shape that what are the future standards of a health stack.
So do you really think that mFine can make a dent in something as significant as that, and telemedicine, telehealth in general can make a difference there?
I think so, and we aspire to do this, and I see the early signs of it. I have reason to believe that this is I think we have the chance to influence this kind of disparity in terms of access in a significant way. On the other hand, let me answer also in another way, right? I mean, how else you would solve this? We added to 600 cardiologists in the last 2 decades in this country. 600 cardiologists over 2 decades. And there is an inevitability to this. And of course, we need to find the right solution. And of course, we need to build the right model. I think we are on to something very, very big and something very substantially impactful across the country. So far, it looks like the model and the assumptions we made is playing out. I think it's going to be very transformational. As I said, I strongly believe India will have telemedicine as a huge component, just like India is a mobile-first country. I strongly believe India can be a telemedicine-first country as well, and has to be a telemedicine-first country.
Well, thank you, Prasad, for this conversation. It was a privilege to have you on our podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me here.
Listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.